now, from the great state of Mississauga in Ontario, Canada, it's the Ted Woloshyn Podcast. Brought to you by ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. ETP Canada. And Tom's Place, for the finest in men's fashion. Tom's Place will suit you. And now, here's Ted.
Well, hi there. Once again, welcome to the Ted Woloshyn Podcast and a brand new episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. This week, a fascinating book. It's such a compelling read. It's titled Cracking Up: From Rising Star to Junkie Despair in 1,000 Days, an Unlikely Addict's Memoir. It is, in fact, the story of Canadian superstar entrepreneur Gordon Lownds. He is the co-founder of the billion-dollar Sleep Country Canada. Why buy a mattress anywhere else? He is also a former cocaine addict who fought his way from the depths of Vancouver's Lower East Side back to sobriety, and then co-founded yet another great Canadian success story, ListenUP Canada. It is a cautionary tale, a journey that includes tragedy, despair, and even some humor. Gordon, it's a real pleasure meeting you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
I guess for people who've read your book, you get that question quite often, and it's more than just a typical "how are you?" like everybody says "how are you" on the streets question.
Well, most of my life I've been a survivor, and that accounts for most of my successes and my existence today, which is I'm grateful, I'm relaxed, I'm enjoying life out in Vancouver Island, and I'm enjoying retirement.
Good for you. Considering what you went through health-wise, any repercussions, any lasting effects on you?
Not physically. The most disturbing thing I found out when I went to treatment was that I was very heavy user of cocaine, and they told me that it kills brain cells. That was a pretty disturbing message, but I still have enough that I'm surviving and happy.
Yeah. And you're 78 years old now?
77.
Okay, but I don't mean to age you. I don't want to do that. That's not fair.
That's all right.
You look great, and I'm glad you're feeling well. I truly am. It must have taken a lot of guts to sit down and decide. Okay, I'm going to open up my life in this fashion, and it's a difficult thing to do when you've got family as well.
Yeah. So I wrote most of this memoir within 2 or 3 years of getting clean and sober. So it's over 25 years ago that I penned this. It was a cathartic exercise just to sort of get my demons out. And I never intended to publish it, mostly because of the collateral damage that would have on my family, my teenage daughter at the time. She was only 17. And of the potential damage it might have for the reputation of Sleep Country. And my partners, Christine McGee and Steve Gunn there. So I didn't want to do any damage there, and I never intended to publish it. But a friend in Toronto who I got to know in recovery phoned me about 6 months ago and asked me to review a book she's written called What's Wrong with My Teen, and she's an addictions counselor that focuses mostly on teens. And so I agreed to do that, and in that process, I got to meet her publisher, and her publisher sort of, when she found out sort of some of my background, she said, there must be a book in you. And I said, well, there was, but it's on the shelf. And she talked me into publishing it. And my thinking now is that hopefully, my message and my story can be helpful to other people who are struggling, because people who are struggling need something to latch on to in terms of, it is possible to get clean and sober and go on with your life.
Truly, it is an inspirational read. I mean, what you went through and how you came out of it, and the way that you came out of it, it's very inspirational, and I'm glad that you did it. I'm not glad that you had to go through what you went through, but I think for the benefit of many people, I think it's a good thing that you did. If we can, let's go backwards a little bit to the founding of Sleep Country was 1994 with Stephen and Christine, as you'd mentioned. Now, prior to that point, you had been a successful in business, your retail and management consulting. You describe yourself as, quote, upstanding, energetic, perhaps a workaholic. As soon as you say perhaps, I know you were. Businessman, and a conservative family man. In addition to that, I mean, you think of shows like Mad Men, and you think, okay, I mean, it's like seemingly everybody there relied on a vice or two. Were there vices in your life?
No, no. Actually, the workaholism was the only sort of obvious um, problem I had from a mental health point of view. I didn't drink. I can honestly say I haven't been drunk more than 10 times in my life. I'd never done drugs before. I was in the music business in the early 1970s, and there were drugs all over the place, and I didn't touch them. And it never occurred to me that I would ever get involved with drugs. And through a set of circumstances that were my
Yeah.
own fault and some bad decisions, I sort of made that major mistake when I was at the age of 48. But before then, you would have thought me as fine. I was on the boards of some not profits. I was doing well. Life was good.
And things were going well with Sleep Country. You had originally begun with two or three locations in Vancouver, and you were about to expand right across the country. Was it at that point that your marriage fell apart, or was it prior to that?
No, marriage fell apart basically right at the start of Sleep Country. And, I'd always worked a lot. And I think the startup of Sleep Country really sort of took my work ethic to the extreme. And it was a major, problem with my marriage. And so my ex-wife and daughter had come to Vancouver with me, but they moved back to Toronto in 1995, basically just after Sleep Country had started up. So, yeah, I was on my own.
And so at this point, you meet a woman and begin dating, and I think you referred to it in an interview that you did as a femme fatale,
Yes, the ultimate femme fatale.
the ultimate femme fatale. Yes, she was a stripper, a dancer.
Yeah.
Not that makes her a bad person
No.
necessarily, but I guess at one point the realization came to you that she had a drug problem.
Yes. So as I said, I met her in a strip club. I was just basically trying to relax. I went back and forth from Vancouver to Seattle every 2 weeks, and I met her down in Seattle. And so I would see her on weekends when I was down there every couple of weeks. And she actually arrived in Vancouver on a weekend with all of her clothes and luggage and said, "I'm moving in." And I, was shocked because we'd never talked about it. And it turns out, after the fact, I found out she was running away from a drug dealer. Anyway, she was living with me for probably a couple of months before I actually discovered that she had a drug problem. I came home one early and she was completely messed up, and she broke down and admitted that she'd been an addict since she was 16 years old, and she was now 28.
Wow.
So we got her into treatment, a couple of treatment centers. Didn't work out. She was not ready, basically, to get clean and sober. And so I said, "Well, I can't live like this, so you're going to have to leave." And she said, "Well, why don't you just try it with me once to see how it makes me feel and see why, you can get some empathy in terms of why I have a problem getting off drugs." And I, uh, I never believed that I would have a problem with taking cocaine once.
Now, was it cocaine, or was it crack cocaine? Because
It was crack cocaine. She told me it was cocaine, and after I smoked crack, my first question was like, I thought we were supposed to be snorting it like they do in the movies. And she said, "No,
yeah,
no, it's crack cocaine." And it turns out that my body chemistry and DNA reacted very positively to the cocaine. So it was an instant, euphoric high, and that doesn't happen to all people. So different people's chemistry reacts differently to different drugs. And I remember it vividly after I took that first hit of cocaine, all of the stress of the world, was lifted. I have no more problems. I was sitting here with a gorgeous woman, and I dropped to my knees and I said, "I will be your slave forever." And I didn't realize I was talking to the cocaine, not to her.
yeah.
But so, we partied all weekend. That was wonderful. And I went to work on Monday and said, "Wow, I can party on the weekends and this will be fun." And then within 6 months, I'm sitting there saying, "Wow, I think I have a problem," because all of a sudden I couldn't get to work on Monday. And sometimes I was leaving work on Thursday night and not going in on Friday. So that realization basically dawned on me. And then it just got worse because I ended up shooting up cocaine, injecting cocaine within a year of starting. So it was a very fast trip to the bottom of the world.
What is that old adage that good deeds don't go unpunished?
I guess so.
Because really, I mean, that was the one thing that I was taken aback when I thought, well, why he didn't do this because he wanted to get high, he wanted to have fun. He did this so that he could help his girlfriend out.
Yeah, that was my plan. And as I said, one of the things I now understand about myself is that I've had an interesting life, and I've in effect been invincible. Like nothing has ever taken me down or got my way or got control of me. And it never occurred to me that I would end up having a problem with cocaine. Just wasn't even in the realm of possibility in my brain.
And you were at one point, she self-described a high functioning addict with the emphasis on high.
Yes, that's exactly right. I now describe it as I was functioning very, very well, so at a high level, but I was also high when I was functioning. So there you go.
It's good that you can laugh at it now, looking back, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it's it's part of life. It's a bigger part of life than a lot of people understand. I think my sense of humor got me through my difficult times. I ended up luckily working with a medical doctor who was an addiction specialist who had a more ironic and satiric sense of humor than I did, and he kept me on the straight and narrow.
Did your colleagues did they have any idea what was going on?
This, you know, so it was complete. No one knew other than a couple of drug dealers and the girlfriend that I had a cocaine problem.
Right.
You know, one of the things that we do as addicts or alcoholics is we're very good actors, and we can put on the show of who we're supposed to be. When we're in front of other people, but behind the scenes they have no idea what's going on. So you're living a high wire act on a daily basis, and the stress of that and the struggle of that. Basically, you're under so much stress that the only way you can get relief is to get high, because when you get high, then you don't worry about anything. So, yes, nobody, my friends didn't know, my family didn't know. Steve and Christine at Sleep Country had no idea until I finally admitted to them that I had a problem in September of 1998.
You said that some 2 years into this addiction, you hit rock bottom. You overdosed and you were arrested.
Yeah,
Talk to me
well,
about that.
yes, I was arrested, but they didn't charge me.
How'd you manage to get that through that?
they they basically they ended up getting me because they had tapped the phone of my drug dealer, and so they set me up, and I thought I was buying drugs from my drug dealer. And then they arrived and said, "Okay, you're arrested." Um, what they really wanted was to find out who else I was buying drugs from, because they were trying to find who the dealers are. And clearly, I wasn't a dealer, and so they scared the heck out of me and threatened all sorts of stuff, but basically ended up letting me go. And actually, they they were so persistent about I must have someone else I'm buying drugs from, that I sarcastically said, do you want me to go down to East Hastings Street and get a couple of drug dealers to give me their phone numbers and I'll pass them on to you? And they said, yeah, you should do that.
Now, for those people not familiar with East Hastings Street, paint us a picture of that
Oh
area.
boy, it's an open air drug market, and it was that way in 1996 when I was hanging out there. There's people living on the streets. There's addicts all over the place. Cops walk in twos and threes. They don't walk on their own. It's 20 years later, it's gotten worse. It's like a war zone. And you can literally, as I said, I could drive down to East Hastings at any time, get out of my car, and because I look like a normal, white guy who still has all my teeth, and I'm wearing decent clothes, they assume you're there to buy drugs, and they just walk right up to you.
As an aside, your thoughts on safe injection sites?
Sorry.
Safe injection sites. What are your thoughts on that?
I think they're good. The whole, the philosophies and different approaches to addiction treatment are fraught with problems. And I quite support, the harm reduction approach, if that's the only way that you're going to get to people. And I think the, the real objective for trying to help people who are suffering from addiction is to be able to get them to communicate with you and basically get them to admit that they have a problem and develop some sort of willingness in them that they will ask for help and then accept help when it's available to them. So the harm reduction sites are a step in that direction, but I don't think they're making a significant dent in the problem.
We talked about the overdose. Can you describe what happened exactly?
Yeah. But by the time that happened, the girlfriend had gone back to Seattle, so I was on my own. And anyone will tell you using drugs on your own is potentially dangerous. But no, I injected some cocaine, and the dose was too much for me to handle. So my body started to go numb. I basically describe it as I was flopping around on the floor, and I grabbed the telephone and managed to call 911. And I basically crawled to the bathroom and flushed all my drug paraphernalia and drugs and stuff down because I didn't want to get arrested. And the cops came and a couple of firemen, and they put me in an ambulance, and I was lucid until I got in the ambulance, and then I passed out when I was in the ambulance. And then I woke up in the ER in St. Paul's Hospital.
And how long were you hospitalized?
The same day. They basically
Really?
woke me up. They didn't give me a lecture about how stupid it is to shoot up cocaine, and I was relieved that they didn't do that. They checked my vitals, and I was okay, and they said, "Okay, you're out of here." And again, St. Paul's in downtown Vancouver. I mean, it's the centralized drug overdose location for the entire West Coast. And so they see overdoses all day long. And they said, you're fine to go. Don't do it again. And that was it.
So in the meantime,
Just so that you understand. So my addiction mentality said as soon as I got home, wow, that was really terrifying. I need to get high so I can deal with it. And that's what the addict does.
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
I've had the great fortune to say that I've been associated with one of Toronto's finest names in men's clothing for more than 25 years. Tom's Place. Founded by Tom Mahalick's father in 1958, Tom's Place offers brand name men's apparel at unbeatable prices. But more than that, they boast a long-serving, knowledgeable, and friendly staff that can assist you whether you're looking for casual or formal attire. And they have plenty of first-class tailors on site. In addition, Tom and his family are well known for their philanthropic work. So if you're looking to deal with great people who can fulfill your clothing desires at outstanding prices, do yourself a favor and visit Tom's Place. They're open weekdays from 11 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, and Sundays noon to 5. You'll find Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Or check them out online at toms-place.com. Tom's Place will suit you.
Now back to Ted Woloshyn.
During this time, none of your colleagues knew what was going on. Only your girlfriend and your dealers, as you mentioned. What about your family? Were you in touch with your ex-wife or your daughter at all during this time?
I was going back and forth to from Vancouver to Toronto to basically open up the Toronto Sleep Country Canada stores because I did all the real estate deals. So, and when you're doing cocaine, the cocaine gets out of your system within 48 to 72 hours. And so I could clean up and be completely, normal for 2 or 3 days at a time without, really feeling that I have to get high again. And so whenever I saw them, I was completely normal. Sorry, I should probably just say I was completely normal, but I was normal the way they were used to me. Let's put it that way.
Okay, yeah. Whatever normal is. Yeah. You said that the whole process was what, 1,000 days that you went through this?
Yeah, I started doing the cocaine in 1996, and I got clean and sober in March of 1999.
Wow, it's amazing. Any idea how much money you spent during that time?
Yeah, I spent about $700,000 on the drugs and all, the drug related, lifestyle. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is the girlfriend who went back to Seattle ended up blackmailing me for a number of years. So that cost me about another $300,000 to get rid of that.
Oh my God.
So, the way I resolved that, I ended up getting her arrested for extortion. So that was not a fun time.
No, I guess not. And in the meantime, while you're going through this, in the back of your mind is percolating an idea for a new company called ListenUP Canada.
Yeah. So that didn't happen until after I got clean and sober.
Okay.
So I got clean and sober in 1999, and I met someone in recovery a couple of years later uh, who, over a coffee, told me the problems he had in trying to get fit with a set of hearing aids because he had Meniere's disease, which basically causes hearing loss. And as soon as I heard him describe the process, I said, "Wow, someone should do something about that." And then the light bulb sort of turned on, and I said, I haven't been working for a couple of years. I've got a lot of know-how, and I've got resources. I can find people to make an investment. So that's where the idea for Listen Up Canada came, and we started Listen Up in 2003.
You talked about your healing process and how you had opted out of going through the 12-step process because you just weren't comfortable in it. You didn't think that it was beneficial for you.
No, it's not. I didn't opt out of it. I think it's very beneficial. And I was very active in the 12-step program, probably the first 5 years or so of getting clean and sober. And again, while I was doing that, I was also had the benefit of working with this medical doctor who was, because what happens, and it's very true, it's quite common for addicts and alcoholics when they get clean and sober, all of a sudden the latent mental disorders that they've had come bubbling to the surface. So all of a sudden you're clean and sober, but you realize, wow, I'm narcissistic, I'm bipolar, I'm depressed. So you have to deal with all of those mental health issues
Yeah.
to really get, a sense of serenity and sobriety in your life. And in the 12-step community, a lot of people didn't have the benefit of the doctor that I was going to.
Right.
And so what happens is what I found was I started to believe that I needed to be around positive people. And there's a lot of victimhood and complaining and whining in the 12-step programs, which I understand. But it got to the point where I didn't think it was healthy for my mental health to be around that as much as I was. So I backed off it. I still to this day help people who, who get in touch and want to talk to me. And I still, do the 12-step program, on a one-on-one basis with people who need help. But I had a lot of challenges in that community. Part of it was because when we sold Sleep Country about 9 months after I got clean and sober. So all of a sudden, I've got a few $1 million in my pocket, and to be a rich guy in Cocaine Anonymous is a real challenge because people find out, right? And
Yeah.
then there's a whole sort of other sort of problems that pop up.
It's interesting that you mentioned that once you think you've healed, suddenly you realize, wait a minute, there's this other part of me that needs to
Yeah.
be healed as well.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many people who have gone through addiction, the problems associated with addiction, and have come out the other end and say, okay, well, that's it. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not smoking crack anymore. I'm not doing whatever it is anymore. But stop right there and don't think about, well, what are the byproducts, as it were.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenges of being in a 12-step program is that helps you get clean and sober, but it doesn't do anything if you've got significant mental health challenges, because that's not the purpose of the 12-step program. And so you need to be able to go and get help. And of course, the first thing you need to do is admit you've got a problem, like a mental health problem, like I'm psychotic or whatever, and then you have to go and get the treatment for it. And for a lot of people, that's a real challenge.
Do you believe that everybody at one point in their life should seek psychiatric assistance? No, I mean that seriously. Whether I think that everybody at one point either goes through anxiety or stress or depression or whatever it may be, and either they don't know about it or they don't know how to deal with it.
I think it's like anything else. There's a continuum of like extreme mental health disorder to mild, and
Sure.
the question is, at what point on that spectrum do you really need to get professional help?
Shouldn't you get it before mild becomes extreme?
I don't know enough about mental health to be.
Well, no, nor do I. That's
Yeah.
why I'm asking.
I, yeah, I think it's and again, I was a bit bipolar. I was clinically depressed, so they got me meds for that. So that was, that basically sorted that out. But yeah, if mental health, when it's untreated, can become debilitating. And definitely, at some point, it's really clear to everybody that you need help.
You say it took you some 10 years before you got back on your feet properly?
Yeah, when I started ListenUP, so I was just like 4 years into my sobriety. I felt sort of in control of my life and my addiction problems, and I I guess I was in good enough shape mentally and spiritually that the investors in Sleep Country Canada all invested in ListenUP Canada. They knew I had a problem. They knew I'd gotten better, and they had faith in me to carry on with the new business.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just yeah, I'm one of the fortunate ones. I mean, not everybody has a nice end to the story.
Just as an aside, I was having this conversation with a friend. I was telling him I was interviewing you, and he said, "Boy, ask him if he's the guy responsible for choosing the jingles, because whoever chose the jingles for both those companies was brilliant, because they were both they stuck at everybody's head for years, and they
Yeah,
still do."
yeah. So the gentleman, his name is Dan Boatman. He had an advertising agency in Seattle, and he was basically the person that I was visiting every 2 weeks to work on all the advertising programs. So he came up with that. He's a brilliant, brilliant advertising guy. Ended up becoming one of my best friends, and he's had a very successful career in the Pacific Northwest.
Do people come to you now that you have done business with, or you do business with, or just friends who are going through difficult times and confide in you and say, "Gordon, listen, I think I got a problem. Can you help me or
Yeah, that
direct me?"
that happens in two different ways, and I think what's happened to me in recovery is I've become very self-aware of who I am, and I've become much more humble than I used to be. And you need self-awareness to become humble. And I've never been judgmental. So yeah, so very early on in my recovery, I told a lot of people in the business community who I knew that I of what I had gone through. And there were many of them who ended up, phoning me and saying they've got a problem with their teenage son, or
Yeah.
they're worried about him, what should I do? So I've had a lot of those kind of interactions. And then a lot of people who are business people, sort of my generation and a one or two younger, who struggle with mental health problems. It usually starts out, with a problem being a workaholic and then sort of goes from there. So I've had a lot of those folks get in touch with me, and I've never said no when someone's asked for help.
How long did it take you to reacquaint with your daughter, to get back to a point where you had a solid relationship
Yeah.
with her?
So one of the commitments I made to myself when I got clean and sober was that I would never let my daughter down ever, ever, ever again. And they explained to me in treatment that to rebuild the trust that I damaged with her was a long-term process. It's not going to happen overnight. So I worked at it diligently. Fortunately, in my 1 year anniversary, where they have a big celebration in AA kind of thing, she came to that along with my ex-wife and a couple of my business partners. So she was cautious for quite a while, but I don't know when it sort of turned the corner and became positive. But I have been there with for her all of this time, and I'm actually now sharing a house with her out in Vancouver Island. So I know she's forgiven that part, and she's read my memoir, and she was completely fine with me publishing it because she thinks it'll be helpful to other people.
She's probably gone from not. I shouldn't be. I don't even know if I should say this, because I'm assuming here, but I'm thinking that she probably went from a point where of utter embarrassment to, boy, I'm so proud of what my father has
Yep.
accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah. She, as I said, I think when I was in treatment, she was, I think, 15 or 16. I can't remember exactly. And the treatment folks said, you have to come clean and tell your daughter and your ex-wife, what's going on. They just thought I was having health problems. So I
Mm.
sat down with them at dinner one night at my ex-wife's house. And the minute I said I'm a crack cocaine addict, my daughter just completely just, her image of me went from like 100 to zero in a split
Yeah.
second. And she basically said, never want to talk to you again, and ran out of the room. And my ex-wife said, you're an asshole, get out of here. So that was the starting point. And then I just worked at it. I spent time with her. I supported her. I was always there for her. And we gradually, regrew a connection that was quite strong.
So was there a watershed moment, Gordon, where you said to yourself, I got to get control of this?
I mean, sorry, for
Your
my
your
cocaine
addiction
addiction, you mean?
was there a moment in your life where you said, okay, no, this is it, it's over, I'm moving on, I got to get control of this.
Yeah. So my bottom, the last 3 months of my using, I was completely isolated. I was shooting up cocaine daily because of the amount that I had been using. A couple of my veins had collapsed, so I was poking myself, trying to find a fresh vein that I could, inject cocaine into. I was completely lacking in any sort of hope whatsoever, and hoping secretly that the next shot I did, I would accidentally overdose and then my problems would be over. But that didn't happen. I was basically sitting there saying, I don't have the courage to ask for help. I don't have the courage to kill myself, and I don't know what to do. So I would just get high again. So that was what my bottom was like, and that went on until basically I was forced. As I said, I took a leave of absence in May, and by September I was supposed to be back to work, and I basically had put a deadline on myself. And when I couldn't get back to work, I ended up phoning Steve Gunn, and I broke down and told him I had a problem with cocaine. And the last thing in the world I expected from him was compassion. But he said, "Look," he says, "like, I'm really sorry. What can we do to help?" So that's how that all transpired.
Yeah. Wow. It's a fascinating tale, and so many people, I'm sure, are so happy as you read along with this. People who read along with this become one of those people who are so happy to see you come out at the other end. You're retired now, as you mentioned. You're living with your daughter, sharing a home with your daughter in
Yeah,
Vancouver
we
Island.
sold ListenUP Canada in 2012, so I officially retired. I did a bunch of consulting, mostly down in the States, for another 4 or 5 years, just when things would pop up and people would ask for my opinion. Then when my daughter moved out west, I decided that I'd like to be close by, and I was living in Victoria, and she was up, halfway up the island. And then I ended up having a couple of heart attacks, and she said, "I'm not driving to Victoria every time you have a heart attack. You better move in with me." So that's how that happened. So I'm fully retired now.
Yeah. And what do you do for relaxation? Are you into golf or fishing or?
No, I don't golf. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of walking, and I haven't done much, to be honest with you. When people ask me that question, I have to figure out, what have I been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. The good news about publishing this book is that actually you got my brain working again, because there was a process to go through in terms of editing and stuff. And I quite enjoyed that. So I started writing again. So I'm doing some writing, mostly on lessons I've learned, from my business career. And then people have been popping up all over the place from like 20 years ago saying, "Hey, how are you? We should get together." I said to my daughter the other day, I said, "It's the first time I've woken up in the morning and had 15 emails waiting for me." So I'm enjoying the being a little more social than I'm used to.
You mentioned how writing the book was a cathartic experience. If somebody approached you to buy the rights to the book to turn it into a film, would you be willing to do that?
Sure. I've had a couple of people say a number, I think 10 or 12 people have read the book in advance just to give me some feedback and stuff. And the two things that have surprised me most is that they enjoyed reading it. They said it's a good read, but they said it's very funny, because I guess there's a lot of irony in it. And they said
Yeah.
this should be a movie. And I said, God forbid, but someone wants it. I'm happy to hand it over.
Yeah. As long as Hollywood doesn't screw it up, because they can do that sometimes. You
Who
know what I'm
knows?
saying? I'm going to leave you with this question, and not that you don't seem to be the kind of person who pontificates. I don't think you are at all. But is there a message that you wanted to pass along to people?
Yeah. So when you're in active addiction or alcoholism, you get to the point where you've given up hope. And what my story is intended to convey is that no matter how bad things are, it's never too late to get your life together and get it back on track. So it's never too late. There's always hope, and there are always people out there who are willing to help you if you're willing to ask them for it. And the biggest, obstacle to getting clean and sober is that willingness to basically admit you're messed up and to ask someone for help.
And just think, if you hadn't found your way out of this whole mess, how much you would have missed, how much of your life you would have missed if you look at the ending of that and where you are today, and how much joy and happiness you would have missed.
Yeah. Well, if I lived to be 100, I would have missed half my life.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a very good point. Well, I'm glad you're doing well, Gordon. I truly am, and I thank you for taking this time. It's, for people who are going through and have gone through addiction problems, it's a must read. For people who aren't and haven't, it's still a must read. It's called Cracking Up. Gordon Lownds, thank you so much very much. All
My
the best,
pleasure.
sir.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Take care.
Take care.
That's going to do it for another week. And don't forget, drop by next week and drop by our website, www.tedwoloshyn.ca. Check out our past episodes and leave us a comment and your thoughts as well. And don't forget to fill out your organ and tissue donation card while you're online. You could change or even save a life. Have a great week.
The Ted Woloshyn podcast has been brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. For more on this podcast and our sponsors, and to talk to Ted, go to www.tedwoloshyn.ca.